Ladies and gentlemen, Jesse Armstrong is with us.
Hello.
Hello. Tell me first about Mountainhead, because this has come together faster than any other film I can think of in recent memory. So you pitched this in December of last year, within 12 months of now.
Really quick. So we pitched it in December, wrote it in January, pre-production through February, shot it in March and April, and then edited it April, May, right? As you've seen, the subject matter is timely. I was really keen to get it out in the same kind of period of time, especially with tech moving so fast, that I'd written it.
Yeah. That is insane. I mean, and this is your, believe it or not, first directing role. I mean, way to make things... Did that make it more difficult or less? Because you just got to do it and you can't think about it. Did that help?
Yeah, it really did help. There were a couple of reasons for doing it. The sort of timeliness of the tech thing, some internal HBO, when they have their calendar of what's on when, it fitted then. But the other reason was being quite scared of directing. I was keen to jump out of the aeroplane door rather than hovering forever and trying to read every book about directing.
I thought you reminded me of Tom Cruise, and now I know why. It's jumping out of airplanes. So tell me about getting this cast together. It was Steve Carell, was he first, I believe?
Yeah, so I had a brilliant casting director, Francine Maisler, who did Succession, and Steve was the first person we approached for the role of Randall. And yeah, I had a phone call with him where I pitched the whole movie. He's a delightful person, but he's quite reticent. So I was pitching the whole story for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and he's one of those people who you sort of leave a little pause and think maybe that might be the moment that you would laugh encouragingly. There was nothing. So at the end of it, I thought, that's it. We're not having Steve Carell. But he was like, yeah, I'm in, even though there was no script at that point. Amazing. So which was the reason I was pitching in the whole movie. So yeah, and that made it all feel much more real.
Wow, that's incredible. Mark, in some ways, you had an incredible job. So how fast did you edit?
We normally take about 3 or 4 months to edit a film like this, and we did it in 10 days.
I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it doesn't show marks of being done so quickly. We felt like, because it was using lots of the crew who'd worked on Succession and it's similar shooting style, and me and Mark have worked closely on Peep Show, and there's another editor, Bill Henry, who had also worked with on Succession. So we had a group that was really tight. So we felt it was possible to do something really quick that wasn't a sort of half a job. So hopefully and I remember that this was the case working on things like The Thick of It with Armando, where there'd be a huge amount of anxiety and panic about getting the script and doing it on quite short timetables. And sometimes you get this beneficial kind of feedback loop of the panic of the production gives a feeling of that enclosed panic of those guys in the house. So that's my excuse for why it wasn't a bad idea to do it so quickly.
So talk to me about the ideas and the guys themselves, because I thought when this started, I'll be honest, for the first sort of 10, 15 minutes, I was like, I know who these guys are. I know who one of them kind of represents almost. But they're not exact, duplicates of, I don't know, just to pick a name out of thin air, Mark Zuckerberg, or I don't know, Sal Almanfried or somebody. They are different characters. So how much did you want to kind of base it in those kind of familiar tech archetypes maybe, and how much did you want to kind of take it away from that?
Yeah, I think also it learned a bit from Armando on The Thick of It, and something we also did on Succession is the Succession obviously has a relationship with the Murdochs and a bit with some of the Redstone, and I think the audience kind of has that in the back of their mind, that they're like, well, we know this type of person, but I like that room for maneuver that you get where it's like, oh, that's a bit Murdoch-y, but actually that's more like Robert Maxwell. And similarly in this, Corey Michael Smith, I think it feels a bit Elon Musk-y, but then sometimes he feels a bit, especially Sam Altman. So yeah, I love the freedom to take stories from everywhere. And also they're comic archetypes, right? Jason Schwartzman's character is he's that guy who's the anxious host, and although there are bits of some tech people in there, he's also just somebody who you recognise from a sitcom, the guy who has worried about how many vol-au-vents there are, and so yeah, it's nice to be able to just choose all the stories you want from reality.
What's the most surprising thing you've learned about billionaires over the years, doing Succession and now this? Because you've obviously been, following the real ones and reading about them and learning about them, maybe even talking to some of them. Has there been anything that's really shocked you about them as a breed?
We went to Recce, go and do reconnaissance in lots of real they're often multi-millionaires, but sometimes billionaires' houses to try and find this house. I guess one thing that's reflected, and sometimes people ask about it, is how their lives can feel very thin, and that's reflected in the kind of interior architecture, the art, the lack of books. I was struck how often the only book in a house would be Ayn Rand's Fountainhead, and thus the Mountainhead, Fountainhead little connection. So, look, you can be any sort of person and end up a billionaire, but I do think it might end up narrowing your life and the time you have to spend on other things and the concerns you have. So, yeah, the life can feel pretty thin, which is another thing from Succession. I think sometimes when life feels pretty thin, you fill your life with things that feel really important, meeting important other business people, political folk. It's a way of keeping your diary full and keeping life feeling meaningful, isn't it?
Yeah. A sense of your own importance, I think, as well.
Yeah, it's what we all do at Glastonbury, filling in, I've got to be here by then, and then this by that. And it's a nice feeling to fill out your whole day.
I wanted to ask about all the Roman references in the film as well. Do you think about the Roman Empire a lot? Or is this a reference to the meme? Like, where did that come from? I think, it is something maybe that they all talk about.
They do, yeah. I think he famously had a Octavian, Augustus, or was it a Julius Caesar haircut? Zuck had. Yeah, all that stuff, the sort of grandiose thinking about the Assyrian Empire, and is this a moment? Is this in Babylonia? It's quite male and quite now with those the sort of books which like to give you an overview of whole of history, but it's definitely very much these guys. Sam Altman had a piece in the Financial Times, an interview with him, where they'd plucked a quote which was, "I maybe have the coolest and most important job in the whole of history."
Yeah.
So I think the Roman Empire comes easily to mind for them.
It does have a history of being picked up by people with a great sense of their own importance. Napoleon, Hitler, they all drew from the Roman Empire as well. I'm just saying. So it does seem appropriate. Do we have any questions out there? Because I could keep going all night, and I probably shouldn't. Okay, Graham is coming over to this lady over here first.
Hi. Hello. I have 2 questions. So the first one is if you can tell us anything more about working with Steve Carell, because he does seem like a genius. And the second was, were you more or less worried about AI after finishing the movie than when you started it?
The AI one is sort of interesting because I don't feel like I've got any special knowledge any more than anyone who reads the paper and keeps up with that stuff. I don't have any inside track. Steve Carell is delightful. Yeah, he can have a certain reticence, but he's very generous, and for someone so famous, he's very humane and personable. I'm trying to think of things other than kind of banal things to say. That joke that I really like, that we nearly cut the at the doorway.
The bowling ball.
The bowling ball. They're just about to go in to try and kill Jeff, and he does a Roman Empire, Marcus Aurelius Actium speech, and then says, "Thank you. Have you got the bowling ball?" "Yes, I've got the bowling ball," which was a very late addition. I was there with John Brown, fellow writer, and we were like, "Oh, could that work in the room just as they go in as an extra little piece?" And I didn't know whether it would work. I ran in and gave the line to him and Jason, and to see them do something live, there was no rehearsal of that. There was no opportunity to see them do it. I said it. They did it, and he to see it was just like watching a sort of Rolls Royce or some beautiful piece of machinery just eat something up like that. So that was lovely. And then for some reason I tried to cut it.
Yes, but we persuaded you to put it back in. So that was good.
Okay, we've got a question just over here.
Hi. I was curious how much improvisation there was in the film, and also it felt like times it's got the same sort of documentary feel as Succession. Is it multicam? And then how then, if that is the case, are you managing to do that in 10 days, Mark? Because that sounds insane.
You might be quite good on how much improvisation, because I tend to forget. Can you talk about that?
I think they did some improvisation towards the start of the shoot when they're just trying to find their place and their character. But I think after that they sort of stuck to the script. There wasn't a great deal. And I think that the camera style makes it feel as though there is, because that thing we say that the camera shouldn't look like it knows the story or knows the script, so it reacts to what's being said. So maybe it makes it feel like there's more improvisation than there is. There isn't actually. I don't think a huge amount, really.
No, not a huge amount, but good little bits. Like Rami was really good at, like, there'd be an idea in there. I can't remember the bit about when he's done his sort of Hegelian theory of history, and Rami does that bit about what about now do slavery, bro. And that was the line. But then he improvised an extra bit, which was like, oh, I'm a slave. Fuck, I'm still a slave, which kind of like told you that joke again made it complete. So if you have a good improvisation, if you have a good vibe on set, sometimes the actors help you. You know, he's got a great stand-up and writer's brain, and I think he could tell, oh, like, that's half the idea. I can just help you double nail it, and some of those things go in the edit because you don't need them, but that was a really good one.
There were a couple moments in the movie where I thought it was really easy to imagine what the characters were like as kids. Like, for example, when your man was bowling with melons and playing with the pins, and you could sort of imagine he was the sort of kid who would like go to his parents' house and move around all the stuff. And this is something I also noticed in Succession a lot. I was wondering if that's something you like intentionally write into your characters, or if it's something that just happens.
It's a really good observation. It just happens naturally, but I think both Succession and this film, I don't know what you think, although they look quite similar, and this obviously billionaire world, power world, they're quite different tonally. This is maybe more of a narrow, play-like, satirical, hard feel. But I think you're dead right that they share. It's so easy to think of those kids in Succession, I think, as kids, partly because their dad is so prominent in their lives. But I think that's true about these people. And, you know, reading about a lot of their biographies, they often did have tough times in school. If you ever feel really horrified about Musk and you want to see if you have any sympathy in your heart, if you read about him, how he was bullied at school and suffered really tremendous violence to his body, you know, being just awful violence. I think it's very present in a lot of them. Sam Altman, I think, also had some. Anyway, lots of us have trouble at school and through those years, but it's very common for them. And I feel like those experiences are so present, aren't they? In some ways, Facebook is this expression of what Mark Zuckerberg went through at college and his feelings about his classmates and so on. Yeah, so yeah, I think it just happens naturally.
Another one here.
I wondered if you'd seen the investigative journalist Carol Cadwallader. She did a TED talk on what she calls the broligarchy. And I wondered if you'd seen it, and secondly, if you thought that there were any good billionaires that exist.
I know Carol Cadwallader's work. I haven't seen that TED talk. Yeah, I mean, I don't know everything about Bill Gates and his whole life, but what he's done in the public sphere, in terms of malaria, you know, they make harsh jokes about it in this film, but I think that goes to show how narrow their way of thinking about things is. I think there's no reason you can't be a good, well, I guess accumulating all that wealth is a problem. But can you do good things once you've got it all? Yeah, I think you can. It's banal but true, right? Maybe.
Hey, So I read an article by Douglas Rushkoff, the theorist, and he was flown in to meet some of these billionaires, like who were trying to build bunkers, like how to survive, those kind of things. And I wonder if you were either indirectly or even directly influenced by his experiences with them.
Certainly by that prepping, the life extension thing feels so incredibly strong for them. There's so many of them who want to conquer the problem of death by overcoming it, and there's so much. I'm thinking about New Zealand and preparations for the end of the world, and yeah, they love these kind of very brutal risk assessments, and taking the small chance of unbelievably bad consequences incredibly seriously when it comes to preparing their homes in New Zealand. What's ironic, right, is that lots of them have this sense of there being like a 10-20% chance that AI will they call it P-doom, the probability of doom, the probability that AI will have such negative effects that we will be wiped out by it. And they have these numbers of like 10-20%, and it feels like there'd be a better reaction than buying a bunker in New Zealand to that.
You would think.
What do
What's your opinion on the actual billionaires? What do you think of these guys?
Well, what do you think? I think there's different ones. I think they're all different. You can't. The real people, you have to go through their biographies and see what they do. This is a fictional film, but the guys in this are portrayed as thoughtless, cavalier, brutalized, right?
Hey Jesse, big fan of Succession and obviously Peep Show, so just wanted to say that. And then my question was, when you had such a short amount of time with this, given so much of it was on the fly, what was like non-negotiable for you of the story? And what were you like, oh yeah, Steve's had a great idea today, let's do that? Or was it could everything move? Could nothing move? How did that work for you?
Well, what was surprising, given the short amount of time, is that we didn't really compromise. Like, the casting was fast, but everyone I loved. I think they're a really brilliant cast. We shot for 22 days, which was enough, and we didn't have to, as they say in film, go long. It wasn't like we were working till midnight every night to achieve everything. I was happy that we got the story. The most difficult and compressed part was the edit. But I think we said to each other, maybe we were kidding each other on, but when we were coming out of the edit, I think me, you and Bill felt like, you know what, we did every stage, we just did them in an accelerated form. What we didn't have was, I guess, a month or 3 weeks to go to let that film sit and then come back and watch it with a group like you of smart people and hear where everyone laughs, and maybe we would have tweaked it. I always wanted it to be as close as possible to an hour and a half. Maybe we could have got a bit more time out, but there's still some scenes that, Mark, you regret cutting.
I don't know whether I regret cutting them, but I did miss them. There's a really good scene in the hot tub between Corey and Rami, but they're discussing about that Jeff still won't sell his AI to Venice, and it was very funny. The dialogue is great, and if it were in Succession, I suspect that the scene would have remained, but because it didn't move the story on, they start off, he hasn't got the AI, and Jeff isn't sure whether he wants to sell it, and then that's the same situation at the end of the scene. So we just had to be brutal and cut it, even though there's lots of very funny jokes, but it's just the way it had to go.
Can I ask, did it always have to be, a murder plot followed by death by lawyer? How early did you settle on that for the overall plot?
Yeah, I did like a week with a group of writers who were available, who were also close friends from Succession: Lucy Prebble, John Brown, Tony Roach, Will Tracy. But the story was the same going in and going out. They came up with extra bits and angles on it. It always had that shape. I did consider an ending where there was a death, genuine death, but it felt like, oh, that terrible things happen in this world, but so far mostly death, apart from Steve Jobs, hasn't invaded on the lives of these people. And so it felt like, oh yeah, what happens is, however much you try and fuck each other over and push each other off your boards, you get through it and you come to a new accommodation. So that felt the true ending, even though it's not, well, yeah, I was going to say it's not the most dramatic, but yeah.
Dramatic in a different way.
Different,
Dramatic
hopefully.
in a different way. Okay, I think we have one more over here, yeah?
Hi, I've just recently come to Succession. I'm still on the first series, and every time it starts up, the first thing that happens is my head starts moving to the soundtrack. I absolutely love it. And I noticed the music in this was very similar and really sort of captures you as well. So I just wondered if you could tell us about the music in your productions, please.
Yeah, there were a few early calls I made when I knew that I was going to try and make it to those writer, executive producer friends to see if they'd help me. And the other one was to Nick Britell, who did the music for Succession. And I felt like, I think Succession is good, and the scripts, thank you, and the scripts are good, and the actors are amazing. I do think that the music for that show adds a sort of level of both gravity, but then also sort of humorous perspective that's really, really important, and it wouldn't be the same show without it. And Nick is just a very smart and nice collaborator, and is able, I'm not very musical, to turn my incoherent thoughts into music sometimes, and indeed for this mostly came up fresh with his own perspective. But yeah, he was a really early request if he would collaborate on this.
How fast did he work?
Yeah, he was scared too. He was he was one of the people who was like, I don't know if I can do this, but he did.
So firstly, I came in a little bit late to the film, and I thought I was just going to stay for a couple of minutes, just get the vibe of it, and I couldn't leave it. So well done. You caught me as a late entrant who also wanted to continue watching and see the end, and that's where I come to. It does seem that you've left it open a little bit for a sequel or something coming back to play on the characters all being still alive, the relationships now being part of a new dynamic. Have you thought that that's going to continue?
Whether we could go back to these characters?
Yeah.
We did think about it, and especially towards the end of the shoot, you've all made friends, and we had a nice time making it on the whole, and so you start thinking those things. I always thought it was a one-off. I've been working on other things which are things I'd like to do and intended to do. This world and the voices of these tech people became so insistent in my head, I felt like I had to write it. So in a way I wrote it slightly against my own will. So I'd rather not go back to this world. I think this is it. It's quite narrow. The working title for it was Espresso, because it was going to be short, intense, dark, and quite bitter, and I don't think Succession was a very sort of capacious world, and the characters seemed to let us into lots of different angles. I don't feel like I've got tons of angles on these people maybe it could be a sitcom, but I don't think I'd want to write it.
You mentioned, upcoming work. Can you tell us something about what you want to do next? Have you got the directing bug? Is that something you want to keep doing, or is it mostly writing? How's it going to go?
Yeah, I'd do both. I'd write for other people, but I think I would like to try directing again. I really enjoyed it. It was special circumstances. It was amenable to this 2-camera thing, which is how I've seen other people work. So it'd be more work for me to do a more traditional theatrical release, but I would like to give it a go.
Well, fingers crossed for that. I'm sorry that's all the time we have, but ladies and gentlemen, please
Hey,
thank you.
thanks for coming,
Mark Davis
everyone.
and Jesse
Really
Armstrong.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.